Hello. Welcome to my channel if you're new here, and welcome back if you're not. I'm Kat, and today I'm going to be sharing my top reads of 2025. And I'm a little nervous. It's honestly been a while since I've filmed a sit-down video talking just about books, where it's not just a vlog. I literally have tea here. I have some water because I feel like I'm gonna need it because I'm just gonna be talking for who knows how long. But I'm really excited to share these books with you. I wanted to break this video down into a few different sections. So first we're going to start off with stats, and then I'm going to share the books that I ended up reading on my 25 books for 2025 list. As you can see, I used to have them in that little corner. They no longer are there because the year's done. And then I will dive into favorites. And at the very end, I do have some honorable mentions. Some of these books definitely are a bit heavy and deal with some heavier topics. So keep that in mind. If there's any books on this list that you're kind of curious about, just take a look-see, see if it's a good fit for you, if that's something that you want to read. For each of my favorites, I do plan on reading a little bit of a snippet of the synopsis based on what's set up in Storygraph. Some of them I kind of like cut down just because sometimes I feel like a synopsis can give too much away. Me personally, I don't really like knowing too much about a book before going into it, so I kind of kept that in mind. I will also just timestamp everything. So for each book, if you don't want to know the synopsis, you can just skip ahead. Before I dive into stats, I guess I do want to mention that this year, reading-wise, was definitely an odd one for me. It was much slower paced. I definitely read less books than I have previously, but still more books than when I wasn't really actively reading, so I'm still really happy with the number. But I didn't seem to have a good flow with books. Like at times I would get into a good rhythm and then reading slump, good rhythm, reading slump. Some months I read maybe one book, some months I read more. So it was like a big range of how much I was able to read. And I think it just, this year was a lot. I feel like that reflects a lot in my reading. A lot of the books I read were definitely for escapism, and I read a lot more romance. I'm hoping that for 2026, my reading year will be much better. More so that I just want to be in a more consistent groove with reading, because this year I feel like I couldn't really find my groove, and I feel like I was a little bit all over the place with my reading, but we'll see how 2026 goes. So for stats, 2025 I set my reading goal to be 12 books. I just wanted to do one book a month at minimum, and I definitely hit that goal. The total books that I read this year was 40 books. For any repeat authors, I typically don't read a lot of books from the same author, at least in previous years. It's something that I really wanted to do and to continue to do. And this year I definitely did that. So Lila Sage, I read 4 of her books. I've read all of the Rebel Blue Ranch series. I think that's what it's called. Emily Henry, I read 4 books. Sally Rooney is another author that I dove into, so I read 3 of her books. Charlotte McConaughey, I read 2 books, and Alexandra Romanoff, I also read 2 books. The top 5 genres were contemporary, literary, romance, memoir, and historical. There's some other stats that I have, but I just kind of wanted to share those. But let's dive into the 25 books that I had set on my TBR for 2025, and I ended up reading 12 books. So I'm honestly pretty impressed with that because I did read 40 books. So 12 of those books were books that I specifically put on that TBR. I read Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, First Love by Lily Dantinger, Salt Slow by Julia Armfield, We Will Be Jaguars by Nemontenequimo, The Man Who Could Move Clouds by Ingrid Rojas Contreras, The School for Good Mothers by Jessamine Chan, Milk Blood Heat by Dantiel W. Moniz, Catalina by Carla Cornejo Villavicencio, Human Acts by Han Gang, Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo, and Dog Songs by Mary Oliver. I do plan on doing a small, a teeny tiny list for 2026 of 6 books that I want to read in 2026, and I think I'll share that in my next vlog. That'll be part of the video, so if you're curious about that, you can check it out there. Hopefully I will have figured out 6 books. I feel like that should be a somewhat easy task because I have so many books that I still need to read that have not been read. All right, with that all out of the way, we can now dive into my favorites of 2025. And this is going to be in order of when I read them. So there's no specific order, not ranking them, just gonna share them based on when I read them. The very first book on the list is Migrations by Charlotte McConaughey. If you watched my mid-year freakout tag, it's no surprise that this is on my list. I absolutely love this. So let me read the little synopsis that I got from Storygraph. Franny Stone has always been a wanderer. By following the ocean's tides and the birds that soar above, she can forget the losses that have haunted her life. But when the wild she loves begins to disappear, Franny can no longer wander without a destination. She arrives in remote Greenland with one purpose: to find the world's last flock of Arctic terns and track their final migration. Battered by night terrors, accumulating a pile of unsent letters, and obsessed with pursuing the terns at any cost, Franny is full of secrets. When her quest threatens the safety of the entire crew, Franny must ask herself what she is really running toward and running from. I could not put this book down. It was captivating from the very jump. You kind of jump back in time, like back and forth in time. So you're getting little bits of like what might have happened. You're learning a little bit more about Franny. Who is Franny? Why is she on this like journey to try and figure this out? Like, there were so many times where I just kind of like gasped and my jaw was on the floor. I just didn't see what was coming next, and I loved it. I flew through this. This is like such a perfect winter read. The atmosphere is there. The way that she's just able to write about nature and like these birds and her love of the birds and her love of the ocean. Stunning. Beautiful. I loved it so much. I also think around this time I had watched The Outrun. Saoirse Ronan is in it and I'm obsessed with her, so anything she's in I tend to watch. And I remember like seeing some similarities between Migrations and The Outrun. So that's also a movie that I recommend. I know this is not like a movie video, but I loved it so much. Also, we get to see her interacting with this ship crew, and I loved seeing the dynamic between them and her, and like how they kind of started to form a bond and care for one another when they kind of started off as strangers. But yeah, loved this book so much, and it was a great way to start 2025 for sure. The next book that is on my top reads of 2025 is Human Acts by Han Gang. Oof. This is one that I really wanted to prioritize, and I'm glad that I read it, and it kind of wrecked me. So let me read the synopsis. In the midst of a violent student uprising in South Korea, a young boy named Dong Ho is shockingly killed. The story of this tragic episode unfolds in a sequence of interconnected chapters as the victims and the bereaved encounter suppression, denial, and the echoing agony of the massacre. So this book is based off of the Gwangju Uprising, which is a topic, a moment in history that I wasn't super familiar with. So this is kind of the first time I was diving into that a little bit more. I remember reading the second chapter or second act, realizing like the perspective that we were in. It felt so haunting. It's heavy to like hear the stuff that's happening, and then also like even just think about like current times and how like upsetting and frustrating and angering it is when people are being oppressed constantly. It's just such a heavy story. It's one that I would like to go back to. I think that this is a book that I could get so much out of like a reread. So at some point I will definitely reread this one. Maybe not right now. I feel like this might be too heavy for right now, but it is something that I would like to go back to and just read more by her. I know she has her new book out, We Do Not Part, and I would like to read that as well as her other books. So I had to mention Human Acts. It left such an impact on me. I cried while reading this, and I don't often cry, but I mean, this was just so heavy. I do have two quotes that I wanted to share. Her death was every bit as quiet and understated as she herself had been. Something seemed to flutter out from her face, like a bird escaping from her shuttered eyes above the oxygen mask. You stood there gaping at her wrinkled face, suddenly that of a corpse, and wondered where that fluttering winged thing had disappeared to. The second quote is, I want to see their faces, to hover above their sleeping eyelids like a guttering flame, to slip inside their dreams, spend the nights flaring in through their forehead and their eyelids, until their nightmares are filled with my eyes as the blood drains out, until they hear my voice asking, demanding, why? So that was Human Acts by Han Gang. And on a much lighter note, Happy Place by Emily Henry. I love this book so much, but let me read the synopsis. Harriet and Wynne have been the perfect couple since they met in college. They go together like salt and pepper, honey and tea, lobster and rolls. Except now, for reasons they're still not discussing, they don't. They broke up 6 months ago and still haven't told their best friends, which is how they find themselves sharing the largest bedroom at the main cottage that has been their friend group's yearly getaway for the last decade. They can't stand to break their friends' hearts, so they'll play their parts. Wow, that rhymed. I did not even realize that. Okay. After years of being in love, how hard can it be to fake it for 1 week in front of those who know you best? This is a second chance romance, which I'm starting to learn. I really like a friends to lover trope. I really like a second chance romance. For some reason, they just work really well for me, more so than enemies to lovers. I don't think I've read an enemies to lovers yet that has really worked for me. There could be one out there, so if you have one that you think might work really well for me, please let me know. I'm always open to it. But Happy Place just worked so well for me. It could have been because I needed this escapism. It could have been all of that, but I laughed out loud so many times while reading this one. It was so fun to me. I loved like the friendship dynamic. So it wasn't just about like Harriet and Wynne. We also got to see their friends and like see how close they are and the fact that they go on these little yearly cottage trips. It was just like such a good time. And it was my favorite romance that I read in 2025. So much so that I bought it. And it is so bright pink. But yeah, I loved it. I think that if you like a friends to lovers, not friends to lovers, second chance romance, I think that you could really like this one. If you love having like a friend group in the story to be part of like the plot, I think you'll really enjoy this. This was a fun time. And now the fourth book, which could totally be biased, but it's Dog Songs by Mary Oliver. If you watch my channel, you know I have a dog. She is the light of my life. I love her. I'm obsessed with her. She is in all of my vlogs all the time. She is just like my sweet little pea. I love her so much. She is literally me in dog form. There's so many things that she does that like I do myself. So we are very similar, which is hilarious. I had to add this. I loved this so much. I haven't really read too much Mary Oliver, so I think it's kind of, I don't know how common it is for people to like read dog songs out of all of her other like poetry books or different poetry collections, but this is the first one that I've read and I loved it. I'm not someone who reads a lot of poetry, and this felt like poetry that works really well for me. It was just like so sweet and so simple and really tugged at my heartstrings. I cried so many times while reading this and I just loved it. I love dogs so much. I always have. I always grew up wanting dogs. I knew that like once I moved out and I could get a pet, I knew I was gonna get a dog. Okay, I feel like I just like went on and on. Oh my God, I think that's a crow. There's like a tree outside. Oh my God, this is very important. What is that? Is that a crow? No, other window.
Oh, snap.
Is it? What is it?
I think it's a crow.
And then what's that? Is that also a crow?
Yeah.
Are there two crows?
Mm-hmm.
I should record this. Are you gonna be able to see? He looks so tiny there. I want the other one to come back. He looked massive.
Yeah.
Nature is healing. Okay, sorry. I just got like majorly distracted by that crow, but it was just like so big and it was like on the like tiniest little branch just hanging on there. So wild. Anyways, back to Dog Songs. I loved it. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I picked like 5 poems to read, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to pick a few. The first one I'm going to read is called Benjamin Who Came From Who Knows Where. What shall I do? When I pick up the broom, he leaves the room. When I fuss with the kindling, he runs for the yard. Then he's back, and we hug for a long time. In his low-to-the-ground chest, I can hear his heart slowing down. Then I rub his shoulders and kiss his feet and fondle his long hound ears. Benny, I say, don't worry. I also know the way the old life haunts the new. I just love that one so much, especially because we adopted Gibby, so we don't really know a lot of her like backstory or like what happened, like where she was found. Like we don't really know that information, and you can just tell that like there are things that really like spook her. We just like don't know like what her past is like. So like when I read that poem, I was like, my Gibby girl, my Gibby girl. So Little Dogs Rhapsody in the Night. He puts his cheek against mine and makes small expressive sounds. And when I'm awake, or awake enough, he turns upside down, his forepaws in the air, and his eyes dark and fervent. Tell me you love me, he says. Tell me again. Could there be a sweeter arrangement? Over and over he gets to ask. I get to tell. I forgot to mention there's like these illustrations. So cute. The Wicked Smile. Please, please, I think I haven't eaten for days. What? Ricky, you had a huge supper. I did? My stomach doesn't remember. Oh, I think I'm fading away. Please, make me breakfast and I'll tell you something you don't know. He ate rapidly. Okay, I said. What were you going to tell me? He smiled, the wicked smile. Before we came over, Anne already gave me my breakfast, he said. Be prepared. A dog is adorable and noble. A dog is a true and loving friend. A dog is also a hedonist. So that's Dog Songs by Mary Oliver. I loved it so much. Okay, the next book I don't have. I don't own it yet, but I would like to buy a copy of it. And it's Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. This is a book about two brothers and grief. So immediately I was like, I'm intrigued. I love reading about sibling dynamics and reading about grief. Aside from the fact that they are brothers, Peter and Ivan Kubik seem to have little in common. Peter is a Dublin lawyer in his 30s, successful, competent, and apparently unassailable. But in the wake of their father's death, he's medicating himself to sleep and struggling to manage his relationship with two different women. Ivan is a 22-year-old competitive chess player. He has always seen himself as socially awkward, a loner, the antithesis of his glib elder brother. Now, in the early weeks of his bereavement, Ivan meets Margaret, an older woman emerging from her own turbulent past, and their lives become rapidly and intensely intertwined. For two grieving brothers and the people they love, this is a new interlude, a period of desire, despair, and possibility, a chance to find out how much one life might hold inside itself without breaking. I loved this book so much. I loved seeing the dynamic between the two brothers and how different they were and how they did not know how to interact with each other whatsoever. I remember like a specific scene in the book where they're calling each other and it's basically like Peter calling Ivan to like check in and like chat with him. Ivan is so like, why are you calling me? Like, well, what should we talk about? Like, do you need anything? And like, they just like cannot have a conversation that's like about nothing really and just like checking in. Like, that is not the kind of relationship that they have. I remember reading that and being like so intrigued. I love these looks into these relationships, especially like with the like two relationships that Peter's involved with, the older woman that Ivan's involved with. I just ate it up. I think I just really enjoy Sally Rooney's writing and her look into these characters. I have now read Normal People, Conversations with Friends, and Intermezzo. I have reread Normal People. Loved it, my favorite. And yeah, I really enjoyed Conversations with Friends too, and like the characters and reading about them and the decisions that they would make. For this one, I think that added element of like the grief and seeing how they like coped, and especially because they both had very different relationships with their father, seeing those differences, I just was so intrigued by, and there's something in Sally Rooney's writing that I just love. I'm currently reading Beautiful World, Where Are You? So soon I will have completed all her novels that she has out. I still haven't read Mr. Salaryman, but I would like to read that as well. I do have some quotes. So this is from Ivan's perspective, the younger brother. Thinking about that day, the dog running for the tennis ball, the pasta that they ate together, the feeling wells up inside him painfully, wanting to say and hear the words again, that can never again be said or heard. To return to the house once more, and not find it dark and empty, but airy and bright again, with open windows. To spend an afternoon together, playing with the dog, eating dinner, doing nothing, only being together just once more. I'm going to read a quote from Peter's perspective. At the table in the corner, the old homework table, sitting with a chessboard, in front of him, thick paperback book held open with his phone, his brother Ivan. As if at the station, Peter boarded by some accident a train back into the past. As if he arrived here not this evening, but 2 years ago, 4 years ago, and Ivan is studying his chess quietly, or studying for his leaving cert. And in the kitchen, their father is even now cooking dinner with the radio on. Their father, yes, alive and well. Something else actually that I should mention is that you get the different point of views between the brothers. Peter's is very like stream of consciousness. It was very difficult to get into when I first started because we start off in Peter's perspective, and it was just so, I was like, what is happening? And then once we get to Ivan, I feel like that's a little bit easier to like fall into, and you kind of understand a little bit more of what's going on. But definitely a struggle getting through Peter's perspective in the very beginning, and then eventually, I don't know if I got used to it or if it changed. I can't remember, but that was Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. Okay, up next is The Bee Sting by Paul Murray. This is a chunky book. I can't believe I read it. This is the longest book I've read this year for sure. And I had to go out and buy the physical copy. I had gotten this through the library, but I loved it so much that I purchased it. I also love this cover. I think it's so cute. The Barnes family is in trouble. Dickie's once lucrative car business is going under, but Dickie is spending his days in the woods, building an apocalypse-proof bunter. Bunter? Oh my god. I need to take a sip of my tea. Oh my gosh. What is happening? I've been talking for too long. That's what's happening. Building an apocalypse-proof bunker. Imelda is selling off her jewelry on eBay and half-heartedly dodging the attention of fast-talking cattle farmer Big Mike, while their teenage daughter Cass seems determined to binge drink her way through her final exams. As for 12-year-old PJ, he's on the brink of running away. If you wanted to change the story, how far back would you have to go? So yeah, this is a hot mess of a book, and I couldn't put it down. I was so invested in this family and like what was going to happen. You could feel like the buildup, like this was leading towards something bad. Like you know it's going to be something bad, but you just don't know what. You don't know to who. You don't know when. There was definitely parts where I had to like put the book down, specifically PJ's perspective. So we do get different perspectives throughout the book. We get Cass, PJ, Imelda, and Dickie, and we're trying to like figure out all the pieces. The perspectives of each of the characters helps to give a little more insight into like what was happening to them in the moment where they were having a specific conversation. Like let's say like Cass was talking to her dad and he wasn't fully paying attention, and from Cass's perspective, we have no idea what was going on with Dickie. And then we get to Dickie's perspective and we're like, oh, I see what's going on. Like there's a lot over here happening that we didn't know. So it was a lot of them like not talking to each other. I feel like PJ's chapter specifically, I just like wanted him to like let someone know. Like let someone know what was going on so that someone could intervene and he didn't have to like figure things out alone, which could be said for all of them. But like there was something about PJ, like he was so young and he was trying to get their attention, but like also the timing kept being off. And it was just like so stressful to read about. PJ's perspective, I definitely had to put the book down because I was so nervous about what was going to happen. For Imelda's perspective, it is interesting because it's very like, I don't think that there's any punctuation in it now that I think about it. I think it was all like basically like one giant run-on sentence. I remember we start off in Cass's view, and as we're learning more about Imelda, like through Cass's perspective, I'm like, oh my god, Imelda, as like their mother is like so horrible to them. And then we get to Imelda's point of view and I was like, I'm gonna hate this. I'm gonna hate being in her mind. But I really loved her perspective. Like I really enjoyed her perspective. And yeah, it was just an excellent novel, an excellent like family saga. I was so attached to these characters and this family and seeing what was going to happen. We're going back in time to see like when everything all kind of started to go wrong in a way. How Dickie and Imelda met, like what happened previously, because there's just a lot that we don't know. And when we're first starting off in Cass's point of view, we only know as much as she knows. So like if she doesn't know how they met or anything, like we don't either. And then we slowly start to like get that information. And this was just beautiful. I loved it. Hard at times, heavy at times, stressful at times, but like couldn't put it down. I buddy read this with Kat and that was a lot of fun to have someone to talk about this with because there was a lot of stressful moments. So this was great. The next book on my list is Skip Shock by Carolyn O'Donoghue. If you've watched one of my like more recent vlogs where I read this, it's probably no surprise. I was so obsessed with it in that video and I read it basically in a weekend, which is not common for me. Margot is a troubled schoolgirl. After the death of her father, she's on her way to a new boarding school in a new city. Moon is a salesman. He makes his living through a series of interconnected worlds on a network of barely used train lines. They never should have met. But when Margot suddenly appears one day day on Moon's train, their fates become inextricably linked. If Margot wants to survive, she has to pass as a traveling salesman too. Except it's not that easy. Move north on the train and time speeds up, a day passing in mere hours. Move south and time slows down. A day can last several weeks. Slow worlds are the richest ones. You live longer, your youth lasting decades. Fast worlds are sharp, cruel, and don't have time for pleasantries. Death is frequent. Salesmen die young of skip shock. That is, if they're not shot down by the Southern Guard first. As Margot moves between worlds and her attachment to Moon intensifies, she feels her youth start to slip between her fingers. But is Moon everything he seems? Is Margot? And it's so good. So basically, when we start the book off, we start off on the train, and I think we're in Moon's perspective, and he's coming across Margot, and he can tell immediately that she is out of place. From the very first chapter, was so intrigued by this storyline. I read The Rachel Incident by Carolyn O'Donoghue last year. Loved it so much. I'm pretty sure that was like a favorite read of 2024. So I was excited to like be back in her writing. The audiobook is so good. If you enjoy reading audiobooks, it's narrated by Natasha Hodgson. She does such an amazing job with the audiobook. There's something about Carolyn O'Donoghue's writing that just works really well for me. I couldn't put down The Rachel Incident either. This like world that she was building was just so fascinating to me, like the concept of the trains, and like if you move further north, like there's less hours in the day, you have less access to resources. If you move further south, like I loved that as a concept. We get two perspectives. So we get Margot's perspective and we also get Moon's perspective. Moon's perspective is in first person and Margot's is in third person. So since she's in this world as like an outsider, like she doesn't know how this world really works, we kind of get her at a distance in a way, and Moon, this is his world, this is all he knows. We get more information when we're reading from his chapters, and I just loved watching them grow and learn more about each other, and also the other characters that we come to meet. Like I grew really fond of them as well. This is part of a duology, so this is the first book, and I will absolutely be reading the second book as soon as that is released or comes out. I don't know if there's any plans for that yet, but I've definitely been checking. I haven't seen anything yet. So excited for the next book in this. Oh my gosh. We are on the final book, you guys. My 8th and final top read of 2025 is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. A young Latin tutor, penniless and bullied by a violent father, falls in love with an extraordinary, eccentric young woman. Agnes is a wild creature who walks her family's land with a falcon on her glove and is known throughout the countryside for her unusual gifts as a healer, understanding plants and potions better than she does people. A luminous portrait of a marriage and a shattering evocation of a family ravaged by grief and loss, and a tender and unforgettable reimagining of a boy whose life has been all but forgotten and whose name was given to one of the most celebrated plays of all time. I didn't know if I was going to love this book. I remember having this on my TBR for years and years. I had been curious about it, but I was also thinking like maybe I won't like it because I'm not like big into Shakespeare. Like I'm not super familiar. Like I've definitely like read plays. I've been to plays, but I didn't know how much I would actually enjoy this. And I adored it. I think there's also like a few elements that just like added to my reading experience. I listened to the soundtrack of the movie that was coming out. I also think seeing the movie pretty shortly after just like added to my love of it, especially because I think the film was done so well. And there's definitely like differences between the movie and the book, but I feel like overall the general like the essence of the movie and the book are there. Both capture the feelings that I was feeling pretty well. I obviously decided to read this because the movie was coming out and I was like, this is finally my time. I need to just dive in and read this book. And it was great. I loved Maggie O'Farrell's writing and the way that she told this story and the characters and just like the build up, because it kind of jumps in time back and forth in the book. And we start off with Hamnet running for help. And you don't know like what's going to happen, because then we jump back in time and we like learn how William Shakespeare meets Agnes, and we like start to see their love story. So it kind of jumps back. It's like a contrast between like present day and their love story. I loved the story so much. I was so glad that I finally decided to read it. This is another book about grief. I seem to just gravitate towards those kinds of books. I didn't cry when I read the book. I definitely felt like a heaviness, but when I watched the film, I sobbed And there's the last line in this book, that final scene. Usually I don't always remember ends of books. Like a lot of the times it can just like leave my brain really shortly after, but the end of this book has definitely stuck with me. I just loved it. I adored it. I need to read more of Maggie O'Farrell and see how I like her other books. I do have a quote. These people who saw him every day, passing by their doors, below their windows, they exchanged words with him, ruffled his hair, exhorted him to hurry if he was late for the school bell. He played with their children, darted in and out of their houses and shops. He carried messages for them, petted their dogs, stroked the back of their cats as they slept on sunny windowsills. And now their lives are carrying on. Unchanged, their dogs still yawning by the fireplace, their children still whining for supper, while he is no more. So that is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. And that is the last book. Those are the top 8 books of 2025 that have stuck with me, and I think will continue to just be favorites of mine. We'll see. But now for honorable mentions. This video is so long, so we're just gonna rapid fire. The first one is Normal People by Sally Rooney. This was a reread. Loved it, adored it, confirmed, favorite, Sally Rooney. The next book is Catalina by Carla Cornejo Villavicencio. I enjoyed Catalina's perspective and being in her mind so much. I will say that there's a lot that didn't stick with me, and I think that's the main reason why I haven't added it to my top books, but I just remember really enjoying it overall and being in her perspective and being like in this like campus environment. The next book is Hardly Strangers by A.C. Robinson. This takes place over one night. They're getting to know each other, and it was just really romantic and cute, and I loved it. People compared it to Before Sunrise, and I can totally see that comparison. And lastly, we have Rejection by Toni Tula-Tamudi, and how could that not make honorable mentions? Like, that book was absolutely wild. I had to physically put that book down multiple times. It was so intense to read about and so uncomfortable, but it is one that whenever I see it, I have like some sort of reaction to. So I had to include that in my honorable mentions. But that's it, you guys. We got through this. I yapped for a very long time, but this was a lot of fun sharing my favorites, sharing what I liked about them, sharing quotes. Please let me know, what were your top reads of 2025? Do we have any in common? Are there any on here that you want to read that you've been curious about? I hope that you enjoyed hearing what my top books were, and hopefully in my next vlog I will share some books that I'm excited to prioritize in 2026, and maybe some goals. I don't know that I have any. I need to think about that a little bit, but we'll talk about that in another video. I hope that you're doing well. I'm sending you so much love, and I will just talk to you in my next video. Bye.